Picture this, it's the summer of 1858 in London. The River Thames, the city's lifeblood, is running low thanks to a heatwave. But instead of sparkling water, the air is filled with a stench so unbearable that members of Parliament literally dangle soaked curtains in vinegar just to keep working inside the Palace of Westminster. This wasn't just bad plumbing, this was the Great Stink, a public health disaster so overwhelming it changed the way modern cities deal with sewage forever. To understand how things got this bad, we need to rewind. By the mid-19th century, London was one of the largest cities in the world with over 2 million residents. But those millions of people had to go somewhere, and somewhere was usually in the River Thames. Household chamber pots, cesspits, slaughterhouses, tanneries, breweries, even hospitals, everything drained into the same river that supplied London's drinking water. It was a disgusting loop. Sewage in, sewage out, people getting sick in between. Londoners were used to bad smells. After all, the medieval nickname for one street was Fetter Lane, from fetor, meaning stench, but the situation was about to get much worse. At the time, doctors believed in miasma, the idea that disease came from bad air. So when cholera outbreaks swept London in 1832, 1849 and 1854, killing tens of thousands, authorities thought it was caused by foul smells, not by germs in contaminated water. This misunderstanding meant the city focused on covering up odours and not fixing the water supply, which, ironically, just made things much smellier. Then came the summer of 1858. A brutal heatwave baked the city. The Thames running low, slow to a trickle. All that raw sewage wasn't being washed away, it was just stewing in the sun. Contemporary reports describe the river as thick, black and bubbling. A Times newspaper article called it a Stygian pool, reeking with ineffable and intolerable horror. Another said the water was so foul it looked like ink. The smell was unbearable. Office workers abandoned riverside buildings, court sessions were cut short, and most dramatically, members of Parliament sitting directly over the River Thames nearly evacuated Westminster altogether. They tried everything. Lime was dumped into the river, curtains were soaked in chloride of lime, even vats of chemicals were poured along the banks. Nothing worked. It was the Great Stink. The Great Stink wasn't just gross, it was politically explosive. London had suffered cholera epidemics before, but those were easy to ignore because they mostly affected, tragically, poorer neighbourhoods. The Great Stink, however, affected everyone, even the political elite. Suddenly, Parliament couldn't just dismiss the problem. Their own noses forced them to act. As historian Stephen Halliday later put it, the Great Stink was the event that finally pricked the consciences of Victorian politicians. Now enter one of history's unsung engineering heroes, Sir Joseph Bazalgette. Bazalgette was chief engineer of the Metropolitan Board of Works. He'd already drawn up plans for a massive sewer system, but Parliament kept delaying funding. After the Great Stink, the money suddenly flowed as quickly as the sewage. By 1859, Bazalgette was leading one of the largest public work projects in Victorian history. So what did he build? Bazalgette designed over 1,100 miles of sewers, including huge intercepting sewers along the Thames. This redirected waste downstream, far enough that it wouldn't foul London's drinking supply. The scale was enormous, massive brick-lined tunnels, pumping stations and embankments that reshaped the city itself. If you've ever strolled along the Victoria Embankment, you're literally walking on top of one of Bazalgette's creations. And here's the quirky fact. He over-engineered the pipes. He doubled their width to prepare for population growth. His foresight meant parts of the Victorian sewer system are still in use today, over 150 years later. Now here's the ironic part. The Great Stink pushed Parliament into action because of the smell, but the smell itself wasn't the killer. It was cholera, spread through contaminated water. Dr. John Snow had proven this in 1854 when he traced a deadly outbreak to a single water pump on Broad Street. But most people didn't believe him yet. It wasn't until germ theory gained traction later in the 19th century that Snow's work was fully recognised. Still, Bazalgette's sewers built to eliminate smell, ended up saving countless lives by removing the real danger, waterborne disease. The Great Stink is often remembered with a chuckle. It's easy to make jokes about politicians running from bad smells, but its impact was deadly serious. London's new sewer system drastically reduced cholera outbreaks. It became a model for cities around the world, from Paris to New York. It also reshaped how governments thought about public health. Suddenly, infrastructure wasn't just about convenience, it was about survival. Now, there are some tragic and strange things that happened because of the Great Stink. Parliament's vinegar curtains. Yep, MPs really did soak their curtains in vinegar, hoping the sharp smell would mask the stench. Imagine passing laws while gagging behind wet cloth. Also, all the fish died. The river got so toxic that all the fish died, leading to a food shortage for riverside communities. But Bazalgette did have an unplanned legacy. He designed sewers large enough for future growth, but he also unintentionally designed them that they were just wide enough for today's maintenance robots to fit through. Now, talk about future-proofing. The Great Stink shows how sometimes it takes a crisis, something so gross you can't ignore it, for real change to happen. Londoners had endured cholera epidemics for decades, but it wasn't until the Thames smelled like a giant toilet bowl that politicians finally acted. And when they did, they didn't just fix the smell, they laid the groundwork for modern urban sanitation. So the next time you turn on a tap, flush a toilet, or walk along a clean riverbank, you can thank the Great Stink and Joseph Bazalgette's foresight for making sure your city doesn't reek like Victorian London in 1858. Because sometimes history really stinks. This has been History of the World. If you've learned something new, click subscribe.